Oh, okay. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Oh, I see it now. Great. Test.
Cool. We're shaking, everybody. Welcome to the Disjointed podcast. I'm your host, Dave Germain. This is the podcast where we ask the question, what does it take to go from 9 to 5 life to one of creativity? And with me is a returning champ to the podcast,
Vida.
Hola. Hola. What's up?
Good
I got your
back.
Twitter handle right, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
And it was kind of weird when I'm like, mocha. So.
People are like, why mocha? You're super, super white. And
Yeah.
it's actually just a nickname my dad gave me.
Gotcha.
So.
Well, it's Mo is short for Monica, which I don't
Yeah.
know why that you had to post that. Like, what else do they think that your name
Oh, gosh. Well, I do like what people did with it.
What
They're
did
like,
they-
it's totally short for Muhammad. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it totally is. You caught me.
It's like, yeah, well, there's Muslims in Hungary, so sure. He's like, no, he was keeping it real. You know what I mean?
I really know how to go underground.
Let me just make sure I'm going to send out. Oh, let's share this real quick.
Sharing is caring.
Exactly. We'll tweet that out, and it is done tweeted. This has been tweeted. It's what we've been
Do
doing.
people get to message you during the podcast?
Yeah, exactly.
Really? Fun.
Exactly. So now that's what I'm looking up for this thing here, just in case anybody chats in there. More than likely, it'll be there could be some folks that are tuning into the podcast. Other folks just basically like, how can I troll this person?
Yeah,
The,
cool.
That'll happen sometime. So usually, what happens, I will. If you see me quietly reach over here, it's because I am banning somebody.
Oh,
so
okay.
I've
You
done
have
that
the
before.
power.
Exactly.
Nice.
I'm going to scoot in just a little tiny bit. See, I'm always trying to make sure that I'm being very, very careful about, like, hey, when I've done a little bit of Lyft driving, right?
Yeah.
And so if there's a female passenger sitting in the passenger seat, and I need to reach down for my water, I'll be like, I'm going to reach for my water now.
I'm not grabbing your.
Yeah, well, they don't know me, and they just see them like.
I'm not being presidential right now.
Exactly.
I'm just getting my water.
I gotta let them know, like, I'm grabbing my water. Just so that way, yeah. But
Do people sit? I just noticed people getting into like Lyfts and Ubers and just sitting in the passenger seat, even though.
I've done that
like-
a lot. Sometimes, I mean, I don't know. Some folks feel
Do you
like.
think that's weird?
I think it's kind of weird because when I was a cabbie, I'd prefer they get in the back.
Yeah.
Most folks get in the back, but just when they get in front, I'm like, okay, here's, I guess I'm gonna try to pretend that they're not here, or
That's weird.
yeah. It's real quickly. I'm like, how much conversation do they want?
They
Do
probably
think-
feel like they're doing you a favor so that you don't feel like you're driving them. You don't feel like a servant to
It
them.
could be that. Yeah. There's some people that just, I don't know, man.
Maybe they just want to reach over and grab your water.
They could. I don't know. That doesn't happen too often. There was, as a cabbie, this one guy offered, and nobody will believe me on this, so I don't blame you if you don't. This one guy, because I had to call him to get him to come out of the bar that he was at.
Yeah.
It was back in Phoenix, and it was two gay gentlemen who were very, very inebriated. And then after I dropped him off, like 5 minutes later, I get a phone call, and he's like, so you like having a good time? Like, I'm willing to pay for somebody's time, just to let you know. Like,
Oh, wow.
I was, on one hand, so appalled, at the same time, so excited. I'm like, I can't believe. Really? Wait a minute. You're going to feel bad about this when you sober up. And I'm like, did I just bang a fat guy last night? Oh,
No,
my God.
stop.
Which, I know enough about the gay community. I want somebody to feel good about themselves afterwards. And that wasn't going to happen if that thing went through. But yeah, there was this group of these young gentlemen. He's like, my friend, did you ever get like a drunk girl who gets like really horny? And he's just like, hey, like, what do you do in that case? And I'm like, I drop her off and get away from there as fast as possible.
Yeah, it's not a porn, sir.
Yeah, well, not for the reason. He's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, because if the girl is drunk, when she sobers up, she could totally be like, well, what if you have like video proof? I'm like, I don't think it's going to matter. On top of that,
No.
I don't look for drunk girls to have sex with, my friend. And he's like, when you put it like that, I understand. Now
Although
I
love being drunk and having sex. Not too drunk. Like, not where I lay down and my head spins and I throw up, because that ruins the moment.
Yeah.
But I love that.
I steer clear. I had
Usually consensual with somebody I'm dating.
Usually, what are you talking about? I mean, always consensual.
Me.
Yeah.
I don't always look for consent. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Dude, there's gonna be some dude out there like, these fucking women are just as creepy as dudes. Therefore, it's okay. And I'm like, no, it is.
It's a joke.
That was one of the things I was talking about, which I'll work on this tonight. Or like, not it's as painful it is to sit through the sexual harassment workshop at any of your jobs that you've ever been to. The only thing that's slightly worse is having to give the sexual harassment. Because I've managed for 6 years, man. I had to talk to my employees, and you know what I've figured out is that if you put human beings in the same place long enough, eventually they're gonna want to fuck.
That's fair.
Usually a sign that I'm making this person work way too much overtime because now they're trying to bang all the coworkers. And if 100 people were accused of it, and I'd say 99 of those guys are probably going to be, they're probably the accused are going to be men. But
there's women.
Yes, and for some strange reason, I don't know why that one woman out of the 100 people feels that she needs to make up for all the sexual harassment that the 99 dudes did. Like, and one of the ideas was, and this is, and
what, rape reparations? Is that?
I don't know what it is.
What?
But this is the weird thing. Like, if a dude does something horrible, like grabs a girl's butt or grabs her boob or something, and you're like, hey. And, like, his boss says, I saw that. What the hell are you doing? He knows, unless he's a psychotic, he knows he did something wrong.
Yeah.
Trying to tell a girl that she's not allowed to grab another girl's ass.
Or a guy. I just had a guy comic, a friend of mine, post about this where he was setting up for his show. Mm-hmm. And he was, I don't know, putting something up. And some woman just ran her hand along his thigh and, like, kind of touched his junk. Mm-hmm. And he was like, what the hell are you doing?
Right.
And she was just, she kind of smirked, whatever. And then he went back to doing what he was doing. And then she just did it again and, like, really grabbed his junk that time. And, to me, I'm like, I don't understand how you think that, it's just okay to grab genitals or, And I've done, listen, not genitals, but, like, I'm sure I've given a hug when somebody didn't want to be hugged. I'm sure I've touched people that didn't want to be touched and not, like, their genitals. But just, you don't know. And I'm starting to realize, like, not everybody's touchy-feeling. Not everybody's comfortable with that. And you have to respect that. And now, like, unless I know the person, I ask, like, can I give you a hug? I'm a hugger. And if they're like, nah, I'm like, we don't have to. It's okay. It's fine. But
I've gotten really good at the sideways hug, where only my shoulder touches the person.
Yeah.
I do that so that way, like, because I'm not.
But I think some people just don't like to be touched, and in general.
I'm that way. I'm definitely that way at work. And sorry, just making sure this isn't Twitch related. Okay, it isn't. Because, like, my first job was with a bunch of teenagers. And it is so important that there is never a question and doubt that you were ever trying to do that. Because one of the reasons why I got that job in the first place, because they got rid of this one manager that she decided to have she's like 40 years old at the time, and decided to have a relationship with a 16-year-old girl. Right? Which they're all living together and stuff afterwards. And I'm like, okay, but my boss was like,
there's such double standards with the women, too.
And there's people. I'm trying to keep it in people, so that because what the reason is that the dude who doesn't understand the social dynamics, he's going to look for any reason to negate feeling bad.
Oh, 100%.
And that's what I'm trying to like steer away from. I'm like, but there is a
dude who thinks that you should feel bad. Just know that.
I would, like there's a reason why it is and stuff, and I'm gonna try. That's what because the stuff that's been happening in the scene over the past couple of weeks, I've been infuriated by it on many different levels. And when I've been doing these morning pages and writing and stuff, I'm like, all right, what can I do to help instead of letting this be a distraction for me and getting myself so wrapped up in all this stuff, like, okay, let's write about it. And I'm like, all right, here's some stories that I can share.
Yeah.
And maybe, hopefully, I don't know, we'll see what happens. But the idea of, like, I was making sure there's never a doubt. So when I'm at work, like, it was funny because there was this bartender that I worked with at a restaurant that she's very touchy-feely with everybody. Yeah. And I'm like, can you please not do that?
Yeah.
Like, and then like, Dave doesn't like to be touched. Ooh, Dave doesn't like to be touched. I'm like, okay, that's the exact opposite thing that you should do when somebody asks you not to touch them. But because of the genders were reversed and stuff, it wasn't that big of a deal. And I'm like, all right, this is something I'm going to have to live with. The weirdest thing is now, and I've told Jenny about this, that there's somebody that I work with now, and she's a nice person, she's a sweet gal, but if I'm up at the window and she's standing behind me, for some strange reason, her tits suddenly get slightly pushed against my arm. All right, and I don't think that she's trying to send it. I think I'm going to assume the best case scenario that she is not aware
of her tits.
Of why,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That's possible. That can happen.
Exactly, and I don't know how to tell her. I'm like, because she's a young person. I'm like, I understand you're like, if I was to get to talk to her about this and be like, hey, I know that you're a touchy-feely person and stuff, and I know you don't mean any intel or anything nefarious, but when you keep doing that, it's very difficult for me to not want to imagine bending you over your desk.
Yeah, I would. No,
with consent.
No, that's not the approach I would take.
But the whole thing is that like once those gears get turning, I'm like, now I have to get those thoughts out of my head.
Yeah.
Because now there's a situation that came to me, not one that I put myself in.
Well, here's the problem, though, is that women don't think like that, and I know that's broad strokes, but, like, if a guy, just brushes up, because in a lot of situations, it's the opposite for us. A guy brushes up against us, and we don't welcome that. So for us, like, that touch isn't immediately like, oh, I can imagine him, blah, blah, blah. Right. So it's just such two different starting points for people. And there's nothing wrong with, what you just kind of naturally start to think about. I mean, you're a sexual being, and so am I, but it's just so funny that, like, it's such a different thing, because I know when a guy brushes up against me, my immediate thought is, am I about to get sexually harassed? Is he about to grab something? Am I about to have an issue? Am I in an unsafe situation? Like, that's immediately what our thoughts jump to. And then guys are like, is that her titty? Is that her titty?
Is that a titty? It feels like a nipple.
Does she mean to do that? Like, does she want me to, like, grab it?
That was a one-off. Wait a second. But then, it happened twice, dude. Holy shit, that happened twice.
She wants me. She wants me.
Oh, my God. Okay, so, and my gosh, if any dude is ever out there who knows it, who got the signals crossed where he thought somebody was interested, made a move and found out they totally weren't interested. Yeah. Holy shit, there's not a rock big enough you can crawl under. But and by the way, before I'm like, obviously with the Benio, I'm trying to be funny. But but the whole idea was
we're comics, guys.
Yeah, we're comics. But the whole idea was like, I am trying to turn off the monkey brain, and I'm trying to evolve.
Monkey brain.
And the primate, the chimpanzee that only wants to basically like propagate his DNA and throw it out into the future as much as possible. Like, I'm trying to get past that. So it's kind of like, all right, I could avoid this situation. I've avoided this train of thought. Why are there tits on my back right now? Holy shit. Oh, okay. It's turning on again.
Also, I just think, like, well, I'll speak for myself on this one, but, like, I'm not aware, again, without the male brain. So, when I hug somebody, I don't think, because if a female hugs me, I'm not sitting there like, oh, those are her tits. But, it's been called to my attention that when guys hug, that's like a plus of a full-on hug, is that you can kind of, So then I started to pay attention, and then I started to realize, like,
Which guys want to do the front hug versus the side hug?
Well, no, but I have friends who do the front hug, and it genuinely is just a hug. But then you always have that one guy who does, like, the front hug and then that extra little squeeze in, or maybe this. Yeah. And you're just like, all right, now you're just feeling my tits.
Yeah. And that's not good. It's not good. And it's weird, oh, man, I can't wait. I don't want to run because we're friends, and I don't want to run bits on you because you deserve better than that movie.
Well, I'll see him tonight.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Oh, my God, I can't wait. This is nice. Oh, I'm so excited about this stuff. But it's weird. It's like watching the. There's a lot of stuff that's happened since the last time we spoke.
Yes.
Which I think a lot. It's a positive move in the direction and stuff. Where like okay, the Harvey Weinstein thing. Where
he's just a piece of shit as a person.
oh yeah, well, I think I put every producer possibly.
I have a friend who worked there, and she was just like, "Oh my God, he is a horrible, horrible human being." He used to dump trash cans onto his assistants' heads if they didn't do something right or whatever. He would just fly into a fury and just grab the garbage can. I'm hoping it was mostly paper, and just dump it on their heads.
I could believe
he's a charming gentleman.
Hey, anybody who's actually ever worked with any like professional, theater people and stuff, there's a lot of cool people.
Are they dramatic?
They're very dramatic. I've stories and stuff like some of the people at the school that I went to, like oh, hope you don't get that director. He's like, why? He's like, because they tend to get pissed and start throwing chairs from the audience at your head when they got like. Can't physically assault somebody.
I can't be an actor.
No, well, but
I would assault them back.
Yeah, that's what I was.
I'd be like, bitch, I grew up in a household where I got beat. I don't take this.
Oh, like, you just run off the stage and do a flying elbow. You know?
Oh yeah.
I'm like, oh,
I'm like the Incredible Hulk. I'm like, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
No, exactly. But the thing is that there's a shitload of abusive people, especially in any type of every stage of the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
And I. The whole idea that I'm like, and this is by the way, this isn't to not negate anything that piece of shit did, but if you think he's the only person or the first one who ever be this to do things this bad,
no.
There's a whole other side.
It's
of that
a cesspool.
Oh, totally, and there's a whole other side of the conversation which doesn't. It's definitely going to happen at some point, but that's not the one that needs to be focused on right now. But I would think that everybody who's ever got cast in any production. It was because of off of their merits and they were right for the part, but I think we all know that's not really always the case of it. But the thing is the reason why that I know there's going to be some assholes out there who are like, hey, well, because this one person did this, then it's they're always going to try to find that one thing.
Well, the
to
loopholes.
negate the loophole and then negate the whole grievance and everything, and that's the part where I'm like, all right, that's going to come soon.
Well, now, I don't know if you saw this. So there was the Al Franken situation. Are you aware of this?
There was one, there was a picture of him grabbing a girl's boob.
Well, yeah, he wasn't really grabbing it because she had like a huge Kevlar vest on, but he like put his hands on it jokingly.
Right.
I'm not saying that's okay because she was asleep, so she was not willingly participating in that funny, jokey picture. Right. However, this morning I saw that... another news outlet had really decided, okay, so let's investigate this. Mm-hmm. And they found several pictures of them during that same USO tour where, she is hugging him and kissing him, I don't think on the lips, but, and is very just not looking like this is somebody who she felt was sexually assaulting her or harassing her or whatever. So, so now it's kind of like...
It's going to turn into a asshole men versus asshole women contest.
I know. And I, the problem is that you do on occasion have, and I've heard of this in the comedy community as well, people who cry wolf and then it comes out. And to your point, it's that one person that then allows everybody who wants to negate things to be like, well, see that one girl, she said she got raped and she didn't. And it's like, yeah, that one. Mm-hmm. That one.
It doesn't, yeah, and it's...
But it almost is like this snowball effect where, you have all these women who have sexual harassment, assault, rape claims. Mm-hmm. They're legit. And then it's like one dumb bitch who is like, hey, maybe I can make some money. And then it just fucking wipes everything clean. And the slate is like, well, no, women all lie. They all lie. Mm-hmm. None of them get raped.
What am I saying, right? Huh?
They all want dick. That's what they want.
And
they were put on this earth to take it.
Well,
there are some people who believe that, you fuckers.
Well, I mean,
geez, Mo, don't you read the Bible?
Yeah, that's what was this idea that I'm like, when it comes to like relationships, like, where do we go for a map on that? Because What, Hollywood?
That's a good
Probably
one.
not.
Or history. Or the Middle East. I mean, where do we go?
Any religious text where you've all, like, you know, like, if you want a good relationship, you need to find a girl that's going to shut the fuck up. All right. Well, I don't think that's going to work in this day and age.
Yeah.
Because it's like we evolve together, right?
Yeah.
There's no way. There's no, like, I think we've come a lot closer to finding an equal balance as far as, like, when you think about history and, you know, humanity and stuff.
Yeah.
But we still got a ways to go. But the idea was, like, okay, when I saw the whole thing with Al Franken, I'm like, I don't even know if I want to read this. Just because, granted, in the Upper West Side, Al Franken lived in the Upper West Side.
Right.
Where I used to work. Al Franken used to come to the restaurant that I worked at all the time.
Was he great?
He was so amazing.
Was he a nice guy?
He was the most nicest guy ever. Like, he would always come down, like, he would just, he would go on his jog, and then he would stop and just kind of sit down because he was exhausted.
Did he grab your boob?
I asked him to. He would not do it. I did everything.
You're not his type, I guess.
I guess not. I'm everybody's type.
You're consenting.
Exactly. Hey, what's up? Hey, what's up, Great Canuck? How you doing, man? We're talking about a very easy topic about sexual harassment on the internet. I'm glad you joined us. This will be great.
We're keeping it light.
Yeah, exactly. But no, he was always the nicest guy. He was always like, I'm sorry, I just wanted to sit down for a minute. I'm like, no, Mr. Franken, you like a glass of water? He's like, I don't want to try. You're working right now. And I'm like, nah, not a problem, Mr. Franken. Here you go.
Yeah.
And he was always the most nicest guy and everything. So, and this is back in the 90s, mind you. So, but I'm wondering, like, because now everybody's like, oh, get him fired. And I'm like, hey, genius, do you really want to get rid of a Democrat in the middle of this? Is it really?
Meanwhile, we're like, oh, he's a known pedophile, Roy Moore. But there are literally people who are saying they're going to vote for him because he's a Republican, even though they believe that he did commit those crimes.
Yeah, and those folks who are
terrified.
I always got to, like, you need to take a deep breath, come back for a minute, think about what you said. Let's talk about the reason why you want to keep him on for as a Republican. And they're like, okay, now, and then you could at least try to have the conversation like, dude, you seriously? There's other Republicans out there, I'm sure, right? Like, okay, you want to vote Republican? That's fine. But I'm not saying that everyone's a pedophile, but, you know, let's really take a look here. And,
I know.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's craziness now. But
it's
the
interesting
Louis C.K.
to
thing
see.
was kind of, I mean, that was heartbreaking to a lot of comedians.
But so many comics knew.
That's the other thing too. Even when it was kind of like, I was never.
He even talks about. I mean, he talks about, you know, masturbation a lot in his sets. I mean, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. I think, you know, I don't think anybody really wanted to believe that he was so creepy and lewd and criminal, frankly, about it. But I mean, people knew. I think the greatest travesty is that people knew and nobody really ever did or said anything, or a friend pull him aside like, hey, Louis, you know, go see a therapist.
Well,
put some mittens on your hands, so you know, like they do with babies, so they don't scratch themselves when they're newborns. Like,
yeah, exactly. Well, This sounds really weird because I'm not trying to defend Louis C.K. I read the letter that he put out.
Yeah.
I believe that it was sincere, and this is just coming from my own personal experience from somebody who cheated on his first wife constantly. That I know what it's like to think one thing about yourself, and then you look at your act. I got really good at not ever thinking about any of the shit that I did to the point where I forgot that it all happened.
Uh-huh.
That's a weird kind of like detour that I took in my thought process, right? So when that thing comes out where you're like, no, idiot, this is who you really are, that it's a massive identity crisis and it's fucking painful. And this happened to him he's not going to get any sympathy from anybody anytime soon, nor did he deserve any. But
I feel bad for him.
I think
I do. I feel bad for him. Because that's the other thing. I don't like these absolutes. We're human beings and we're complex. I feel bad for him. Mm-hmm. I also think he's a sick man. Mm-hmm. I also feel incredibly bad for the women who were victimized. Mm-hmm. And I have the capability to have all those emotions and thoughts about it, and I don't necessarily want to become a person where I think in absolutes and I feel in absolutes, and it's, you know, I do. I feel bad for him.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel bad for the victims.
Totally.
I think everybody needs to get help. You know.
This has to be like you're a rape sympathizer, Vida. And,
well,
well,
know.
no, this is the weird. Okay, and
if it weren't for rape, I wouldn't get laid. Just kidding.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. If anybody even takes that seriously.
Oh no, we're gonna put that as the clip.
I'm gonna fucking kill you if you do.
No, but
I'll rape you.
This is the weird thing about it is that the most important aspect I thought, or the one that stuck out to me in that apology and stuff, was that he didn't I didn't take into account my position as a boss and stuff, and I could see somebody who was really self-conscious wanting to really believe that these girls were letting him do this because they were into it and they liked him, not because that he was their boss and he wasn't a powerful person.
Well, so let me say one thing about. I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
Oh no, so not to say that when you're trying to as a person who was sick, trying to convince yourself that you're a good person, I can see how that happened. And I think what comes along with an even the bigger point that I think people can learn from this, especially guys, is that you do have to take into account your position over other people. Like if you're a producer or if you're whether not even it's in the entertainment industry, but you're the foreman or you're the GM or the assistant manager of whatever place and stuff, that hey, maybe this person you're chatting and flirting with, and she seems like she's okay with it. If you weren't her boss, do you think she would be okay with it? That's what I think is a good question for a lot of people to ask.
So here's what I'll say about this. I think that because with him in particular, because it was masturbation, so technically he didn't do anything to those women, right? He didn't touch them. He didn't make them touch him. I think that people don't really understand the mechanics behind what he was doing. I don't either. I did, however, read an article in which a psychologist was interviewed, and she explains what's really going on in the mind of somebody like that who masturbates in front of women. It is actually quite demeaning, degrading, and violent towards women in their mindset. So it isn't... See, because I think that a large majority of people, men and women, are like, oh, okay, well, I mean, he yanked it, and we think about that action as masturbation, like you masturbate, I masturbate. So we think about that in that context, right? Like, I don't think masturbation's bad. It's not cool to do it in front of somebody who maybe doesn't want you to, but that's not really what's happening in the mind of specifically a male who does it. Right. It comes typically from a place of hatred towards a female, a mother. So it does not come from a good place at all. So it doesn't even matter, frankly, what his position was. Because think about it. There are men who do that to women on the subway. Homeless, they're not in any position of authority over me. Right. I still feel very violated.
Yeah, totally.
So I think it's important that maybe we try to understand the psychology behind what he's done, to also understand why people tend to feel so victimized when it happens to them. The other thing, which is always a conundrum, because I've had, situations like that where a stranger has either jerked it in front of me or they've touched me. What's really hard is a lot of times what kind of gets them off or gives them that thrill or what they're really looking for is the reaction of the other person.
Whether it's like a violent, hey, fuck you. Or
anything, any reaction. And so it's really hard because I had a situation where I was on the subway. A guy walked past me. He was getting out and he grabbed my crotch. Oh. But then he got back on the train at the door that was one down, so he could watch me for the next stop. And it was one of those situations where if I react, I'm giving him what he wants. Mm-hmm. If I don't react, then I'm not doing anything, and I'm allowing a perpetrator to just continue to ride the New York City subway.
Right.
So it was really, and also I was so shocked, and I admit I didn't do anything. I just I saw him, I looked at him, he smirked at me,
which told me, and that honestly, like, that was the grossest part.
Right.
Was that fucking smirk on his face,
Like,
looking at me like,
that type of thing.
yeah, bitch.
Ugh.
It sucks. It sucks. And that's what I'm saying is that it's not the actual act. It's really what's behind it.
Yeah, no, totally. And I wonder if I'm not sticking up for him again. I'm gonna have to keep putting this stuff in there.
Right.
I wonder if he realized that he
all
carried
opinions are not our own.
Yeah, exactly. None of anything that comes out of my mouth, I'm taking responsibility for. Nothing.
None.
I wonder if he realized how much resentment he had towards women.
My God, I mean, when you look at his stand-up, when you look at his show, when you look at movies that he has been a part of, well, not Pootie Tang, but
Yeah.
no, I'm kidding. He is a very, that's what he does. He examines the human psyche, the human condition. It is very hard for me to believe that somebody who is able to do that and include himself in that, because he talks about himself a lot in the set, right? It's hard for me to believe that he has zero self-awareness of this.
One of the downsides to have, and this is something my therapist told me years ago, I remember he was like, Dave, I think you have a very analytical mind. I think you're really good at
Your
figuring out
therapist
your
sounds really
emotions.
bored with you.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. He was like, when is this, where is our time up? We got 10 more minutes. God damn it. Okay.
I have a great therapist.
He was
Shout
saying,
out, Lisa. Okay.
but no, he's like, you're really good at analyzing things, and you're so good at analyzing that you analyze things to the point where you don't feel them. That's your defense mechanism. Anything that you don't want to feel, you could find a way to work your way around it. And I was like, really? He's like, you don't, like, one of the things he's like, you've never figured out that you still hold a lot of resentment towards your family, that you're still pissed off at your dad, that you're still doing this, that you completely let somebody my first wife, walk all over you for years, and you've managed to make yourself that you're the one, the person that's responsible for all this stuff. And I was like, okay, and I mean, not
It's
to say
possible that that's what he's done.
but it's
because I almost feel like his apology was a little bit of a.
I think it was a good first step, and I think
okay,
but, like,
we'll go with that.
I mean, and that's pretty weird because
But I think a lot of women heard in that what you're talking about, just kind of still. You can just tell. You can tell if somebody still has that ability to add that proverbial but.
Yeah,
I think that's how women felt about his apology.
That's fair. Just from, but I will say from a guy who's had to like seriously apologize for a lot of the shit that he's done. It's not going to be. I think he'll come back from this. I think it's going to be a couple of years, but it's going to take some serious. I think there's been a blind spot in his character that now it's all coming. It's public and stuff.
Yeah.
I will say this: that the first line out of that thing was what? Okay, all the stories you heard were true.
Yeah.
He's unlike Cosby, unlike a lot of these dudes and stuff where I'm like, oh.
But he did deny it for a long time.
No, and that's the part that was
so
really
that's
messed up. Yes.
yeah, that's the thing is that there's also footage of him denying that stuff, and then also kind of at times saying like, oh, I'm not even going to address that.
Right.
And it really was, because people were enablers, because there was no consequence to it, that he kept doing that. And then finally there became consequence, and then he was like, okay, well, mea culpa. Right. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard. I mean, this all sucks. I don't like
totally.
it. I want to get off the merry-go-round. Can we stop it? And can I? Okay.
Totally. This
I want to get off.
conversation or just the entire podcast in general?
No, just the planet. I just need to leave the planet for
Sounds
a little
good.
bit.
SpaceX. Come on, hurry it up, man. Come on, Elon. Have you looked at Facebook?
Right.
You need to get the fuck off of this rock.
Yeah, seriously.
But I think what's good about all those things is that we get to have conversations like this now where you're like, oh, okay, because you know what? I mean, I'm looking at the letter particularly that he wrote one way, and then you're like, well, okay, I've never been, masturbated at or touched inappropriately, like on a subway.
You haven't?
Nope.
Have you ever been flashed?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Well, there's always tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. Let's hope. I mean, I guess someday somebody wants to. Now
it's fun. It's a fun experience.
Yeah. This is weird. Oh, you know what's so funny? Have you watched? I don't know how much Netflix you watch because you seem like you probably actually have a social life.
Oh no,
like me.
No.
Is that the show?
I just know how to post on Facebook.
I was watching the show that called Big Mouth. It's like a very raunchy animated.
Oh
cartoon.
yeah. I haven't watched it, but I know what you're talking about.
Oh my gosh, it's so freaking hilarious! Like I had to kill a couple of the idea at my premises because they already covered it.
Oh,
the whole hormone monster thing where it comes out like, hey, the girl's interested. You know what you should do? Send a picture of your dick. They love it when you do that, especially when it's unsolicited. And it's funny as I watch this, I'm laughing, and Jenny's getting ready for work, and I hear her scream from the bathroom like, "No, it isn't." That is so wrong. And then she comes out.
I think that's an amazing phenomenon, the dick pic.
Yeah. Well, that's the first thing. Like humanity's like, well, we can actually communicate with each other. Hold on, before we do that. Here you go.
I'm just gonna wait for guys to start flinging their poop at us.
Yeah, that'll work. I'm sure. But no, it's
that's
it's
where
so
we're
strange.
at.
There's a lot of. It's funny. The idea is like I think that there still needs to be a lot of do's and don'ts. Like if you don't have like my dad passed away when I was really young. Okay, normally if you're growing up and you have a dad in your life, he's the first person that actually figured it out. If he's like still with your mom, so you want to learn from that guy,
right?
Right? What do I do? Do I do this? Do I do that? Is how do I talk to a girl if this girl's not interested in me? How am I supposed to? How do I fix this? Yeah. Your dad's supposed to be able to tell you, well, listen, son. Okay, if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. All right? But this is simple things that anybody can tell you. But if that person is not there, you're just kind of flying. You're just in this Ferrari of testosterone, just flying down the road.
Yeah, but let me also say this, because if we go back, I mean, society has made it for women where historically, and this has changed and is continuing to change, but we were not supposed to pursue. Mm-hmm. We were supposed to be coy. You're not supposed to want sex, go after sex, even enjoy sex in some cases. So, I'm not excusing the behavior, but at the same time, I think that both sides kind of fostered this dynamic of the men have to be the aggressor. The men have to go after it. They kind of have to throw shit against a wall and see where it sticks. And if it sticks, great. And sometimes, there's this anger that men have because they get turned down or whatever. So I think as a society, we have to examine the whole dynamic that exists and be like, well, then if we don't want men to be aggressors, then we also need to come to terms with our own sexuality, our own way of interacting with men and dating and not being coy. And, I don't think it's fair to have this, well, I want a guy to pay for everything and, and these very kind of antiquated ideas that we're still doing, but then at the same time...
I should do this. And why are these guys so aggressive? I don't understand it. Anyways, I think he should do
and again, I mean, it's not excusing behaviors. I think the behaviors suck, and I think that they're just so freaking ground into us. But I think we can't just look at it from one perspective, or we can't just go after men and say, men have to change. Yes, 100%. And the more aggressive and unfortunately the more criminal does tend to be the men. So let's stop that first, the criminal part especially, but let's really look at it as a whole society.
How did it get that point in the first place?
Because what's going to happen, in my opinion, is if we don't look at it, then we're just not even going to know how to fucking date anymore. We're going to end up having to go into like sperm banks that are like frozen yogurt places, to like, because we can't even sleep together anymore and
so
organically have sex.
Just throw it on the back.
Yeah. I mean... Like, I want us to be really careful. And the other thing that I think I'm very nervous about is the way some women are approaching this and kind of taking a victim mentality to things. I think you you can be a victim by, or not by choice, meaning that somebody has victimized you.
Right.
But I think if you continue to perpetuate that mentality and feeling like you're powerless and you have no control over anything, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. And I just, it makes me nervous because I hear some of that kind of popping up, and I hear younger women, and sometimes I feel like the way they talk about things, the way they think about things, they don't understand they have a lot more power and control than they're giving themselves credit for.
It's true, and it's the weirdest thing is if I always felt like if you act like if you kind of do the whole victim thing, eventually it's a strange thing is that you attract predators.
That's exactly
weird,
right. That's right.
Thing. It's kind of like, oh man, I don't understand why these wolves keep coming around. Like, because you bathe yourself in lamb's blood and walk out in the wilderness.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, I mean, a criminal is a criminal, and if they're wrong, but I just, you know, it makes me nervous to have people just kind of giving away all control and thinking and feeling like they can't do anything, or, you know, they can't scream at somebody like, no, or I don't want to see your dick, or put it away, or I'm calling the fucking cops, Louie.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I say this as a victim myself, and knowing how hard it is, and there's so many things going through your mind, and you don't always, you know, you say how you think you're going to react, and you don't always, but to still be able to come back to a place and be like, okay, you know what? I didn't do exactly what I should have in that very moment, but here's what I do control now, and I'm doing it.
Right.
You know? Anyhow. Oh, falling off the soapbox. Okay.
Well, you know, like I say, we all got a ways to go. We haven't figured out. Like, seriously, like, only I would say in the past, 200, maybe? No, I'm going to go a little bit farther than that. I'll say 500. Okay. It's only been about 500 years for the most part that if we saw strangers come into our village or our boats pull up onto our shores, the first thing we don't do is we grab the weapons and try to kill these guys, or we run away and hide all of our women. Like, humanity, if you saw strangers coming in, that usually meant that it was an invading tribe and stuff, right? So that's only in the past couple of 100 years. That's not taking like the couple of past thousands and stuff, right? So it's even with Twitch and stuff, a lot of the folks that not you, Great Canuck, you've been actually awesome this whole entire time, but I don't even know if you're still watching. But there has been there's times like oh my gosh, some of the last when I have either you or play the videos with either you or Cherry, Pop is the burlesque dancer. Some of the hatred, most like vile shit comes through the chat room and stuff for these guys. Where I'm kind of wondering, I'm like, what? That's not how you make friends, man. Did somebody tell you that?
Yeah, but you can hide behind that now. I mean, I think technology has allowed us to be real dickheads and not have to, you know. And you know what's ironic is Louis C.K. has a bit about it, or he talked about it, and you know, it kind of made a light bulb go off in my head, because he said, you know, when I was a kid and I bullied another kid, you had to stand there and watch what that did to that other person. You had to deal with yourself as a piece of shit because that person started crying or they punched you or whatever. But now, you know, you don't. You really have your you know, conscious mind can just be like, well, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, it felt good to say something hurtful and terrible, or to make somebody feel like shit online, and there's no consequence to it.
I'd like to think that there will be.
There is consequence.
You run
but
into that
but that
person on the
in
street.
that moment, there's huge consequence.
Oh, yeah.
But in that moment, you feel like, oh, it's fine. There's nothing happened. And that's not true, because we see these poor kids killing themselves. We see them in terrible situations, mentally, emotionally, you know, because they're being bullied online. So there's huge consequence.
Oh, totally. Or even just people in general. And
we suck.
Oh my gosh, this is one of the weirdest things, and I'm hopefully that even every time I mean, granted, I've banned quite a few people in the chat rooms and stuff, but the whole idea is the part that I feel bad about. I'm like, I wonder if they're ever going to have a meaningful relationship with anybody, or just a meaningful.
I'm telling you, it's going to be like frozen yogurt. You just go pick sperm from a machine.
They're never. You know, the thing is, they're never going to know what that feeling is. Going out, taking somebody out for dinner, and things are going really well. And that moment when you lean in, to see if there's a kiss, and they kiss you harder than you thought that they were going to.
Yeah.
They're holding on more than what you thought they were going to. And you're just, sparks are flying. You're like, holy crap, for one night out of my whole fucking miserable life, something good has happened. And you guys are not going to feel that because the first thing you do is say, nice tits, slut. And then you send them a picture of your dick.
Or you get them to sign a consent form like, can I kiss you?
Yeah, and you're missing out on all that stuff. The other thing I wanted to talk about, since we kind of brought it up as far as with bullying.
I'm a bully.
I've been a bully too,
No.
and
I hope not.
and I've learned from it, and I've been bullied. I'm a human being, right? And there's times where I've wanted to break something that was beautiful.
I
and it
push
was
back.
shitty.
I don't like to think. I mean, I'm sure I've bullied too because I'm a human being and I suck at stuff. But
Right.
I do push back. I have an edge for
Right.
sure.
Oh, totally. That's, I think, one of the reasons we get along so well. But this is one of the things that I've kind of noticed and stuff about folks. Like there was, I'm not going to mention the comic's name here, just because.
We don't need the drama.
We don't need the drama, even though I'm sure I can get a bunch of more. I can use that guy's drama to get my name out there, but I'm not going to do that. But the whole thing is that I remember this person's act that I was on a show with, right? And they're very, very funny. But the persona that they're acting was like, oh, what a nice person he is, and he's the champion for all these people and all these causes and stuff. He's very left-leaning and stuff like that. And it seems like, and legitimately seemed like a nice dude when I met him. Then I've seen some of the altercations this person has gotten on Facebook, and I've seen the hatred, venomous, vitriolic, just the pure evil that comes out of this person's mouth, where I'm like, so which one's real? Which one's the real you? Is it the person that I met, or is it the asshole that I see online? And
Probably both.
And
I think we're complex human beings.
I'm just going to assume that they're the latter from this point, because
I
the reason
mean,
for that
if
being
there's a
is,
huge disconnect, yeah, probably.
absolutely. Well, the whole idea is that
Or maybe they don't kick dogs; they just kick people.
it could be, but
I don't know how philanthropic they are.
Exactly.
If they only champion beasts.
Could be. But the idea is that I think that you get to know somebody really, really well, a truer sense of who they are, not the soul sense. But
I'm also careful to say, like, oh, what appears on Facebook. I put a lot of shit on Facebook.
This is true. But I will say, like, just because I'm not lumping you in with this person, because there's times I can, like, oh, shit, Mo's pissed off. I can see that Mo's, like, really, really pissed off. But the thing is, that's not everything that you put up
That's
online.
true. Yeah.
So
I'm also getting my pussy waxed.
Yeah. She did. She actually.
Yeah, I did.
The other day. If you want to follow Mocha Vida and want to know when she's getting Brazilian, at Mocha Vida Twitter, follow her. She won't have a problem with it. She wants you to know. Just don't send a picture.
Don't
of
troll
your
me.
stuff.
Don't troll me. They're jokes, so you can laugh.
But there's a big difference and stuff like that. I started looking at this person's, everything they put on Facebook, and it's one fight after the other.
Yeah,
And
that's true. I see
like,
what you're saying.
So
Yeah.
I guess that's
if they're fights.
That's maybe what I was trying to get across. Where I'm like, oh, is this who you are all the time?
But that's
versus-
probably also going back to the point of, like, look how bold they are on Facebook,
Right.
and yet when you see them in person and their act isn't bold, it isn't edgy, they're probably not doing anything to somebody, to their face. Like, they wouldn't say it to their face. And then they're just getting on Facebook and being a jerk.
Right. So that's usually like somebody that.
So no balls.
Pretty much. That's somebody that I don't want to talk to. That's somebody that I don't need to do business with. That's somebody that I don't have to be friends with. So I'm like, okay. But that's I think that's probably another thing that I'm started like, okay, how can I take control of how I interact on Facebook?
Yeah.
So, because I can't control the world.
No.
I'm not an evil genius, and if I did, I probably would, actually. But the whole idea is a good thing I'm not. So I'm like, what can I do to take responsibility for my own shit?
Right.
And so, like, if I see this person, I've unfriended so many people in the Denver comedy scene over the past couple of months just because of the hateful shit that they've been putting out there. And I'm like, okay, whether I agree with your message or not, all I see is hate. You're done. You're done.
Yeah.
You're done. And I feel bad because the scene has changed so much in the past couple of years because of that. And that's the only. And I'm not saying that those people have.
I feel like I got here at the shittiest point in time. Because I talk to people who have been here for a really long time.
Mhm.
I talk to people who have been in it for like over a decade,
Right.
and how amazing it is, and how it's really fostered and nurtured some great comics and things like
Totally.
that.
And it
And
still can, yeah.
It's such a disconnect for me because I'm like, really? And then I was talking to somebody, and they're like, it's changed a lot, and there's been an influx of outsiders coming into the Denver scene, and it's really made it kind of what it is today, which is a scene that needs to figure itself out.
Well, this is my suggestion for it, and I'm not running a bet on you, but
You can
stop trying
just
to fuck
make
your
sure.
coworkers.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. That was something that I noticed almost immediately, and I was just like, "Wow, really? Like, wow." Because listen, relationships happen, people hook up without a doubt, and having come from and being a part of the New York comedy scene, it's so huge that first of all, it's not as apparent, right? But I mean, eventually though, even in the corporate world, because I do have a day job, I mean, you can't do that. And I wouldn't respect a male coworker that I knew was doing that, as well as a female. It's just poor form. It never benefits you. Never do you hear a story where you're just like, I fucked all my coworkers. I fucked everybody, and I think that, for those of us who come from markets where there's industry and there's professionals who really have this as a career, you start to realize, like, it needs to be more than friendships and community. I think hanging out is fine.
Right.
I think it's fun, but, and people are roommates. But I think that there comes a point where the lines get so blurred, and I haven't seen it work to the benefit of people. I'll put it that way.
And I think that's one of the detriments of a lot of that it happened. And I understand. By the way, when this happens, it's usually I can't say that when I was in my 20s I wouldn't have done the same exact shit. So this isn't a judgment thing on anybody, but
it's not. It's just knowing that it doesn't work to benefit anybody. It really doesn't.
And I mean, granted, don't get me wrong. There's been a few comics in the scene that I do find very attractive, but I also make it a point that I don't talk to them as much. I mean, it's still professionally, but the thing is like, I'm going to take responsibility for my own stuff, right? And not put myself in a position where I'm going to either embarrass myself or make somebody else feel uncomfortable, right? That's what being an adult is. And we're like, well, what if I really want to get laid? Well, I luckily live in a city.
There's so many people. I know.
There's so many people. Like, seriously, if you take
Tinder, just get on fucking Tinder already.
Still, even then, there's a lot of people. Like, okay, wait a second, because, and I could be wrong on this, so I will ask the opinion of a lady.
Let's go find a lady.
Okay, if you're a lady, please chime in.
I'm here for you. I'll cover for now.
Because Mo tweets about when she gets a Brazilian, so obviously we're not gonna. No, the Tinder assignment that was supposed to be for a casual. Dating site, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Originally.
So I was talking to Jenny. I'm like, I want to see what this thing's about, and she's like, all right, cool. So I'm looking it up for a little bit, and I spent like maybe about an hour or so just like swiping, and like reading profiles, and I'm like, yeah, this is crazy. She's like, what? I'm like, all right, you know what the thing's supposed to be about, right? Okay, looking for a long-term relationship.
Now it is. Now it's changed. Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, human beings can't have anything nice. But the thing is that years ago when I was into the crazier scenes that I was talking about, there was a site, it's still out there, called AFF, Adult Friend Finder. And there were still people on there. I was like, I'm looking for a steady relationship. I'm not looking to hook up. You're on Adult Friend Finder, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Why are you trying to fuck this up for everybody? And it's just so crazy.
Read the rules.
So it's just like...
That person's probably crazy. They have like heads in their freezer and
most
stuff.
People
right?
who are on that site anyway.
I just want a friend. I want a relationship.
I just want to talk to somebody occasionally.
My cat won't let me fuck it anymore.
That's nasty, Mo Vida.
I am nasty. I think we've covered that.
But yeah, it always comes down to, as far as going back to what we were saying, is like, stop trying to bang your coworkers. when it came into the comedy scene, I'm like, every comic that's at that mic, whether you know their name or not, is your coworker.
Yeah. I think my rule of thumb is if you go to a mic or you go to a show and you find yourself talking with other comics more about gossip and who's fucking who than you do about comedy or, you know, anything comedy related, shows, producing, whatever. And you really, it's a lot more about that kind of drama. You probably need to switch gears.
Well, this is a weird thing that I'm kind of glad you said that. And this is something that I've been, and might be a very, very freaking Gen X-y, they're all posers type of thing to say. So I get that. There's a lot of folks that, when it comes to whether it's like whether music open mics or comedy open mics or whatever, that's the only thing. When that's the only thing they do, that's their only social circle. And it's kind of like, well, this is now.
Well, that's the problem.
And that's the thing is, I'm like, we're not here necessarily. I mean, granted, we're friendly with everybody. We're supposed
to be
friendly.
I'm not. You can be friends,
right?
But I just think I don't even. You know what? Honestly, I don't even think it's good for your comedy because I get material from hanging out with my muggles, and you know, just. I think that you get very myopic when you're only hanging out with other comics. You tend to write where they almost become inside baseball type of jokes and things like, I don't know, whatever. Don't listen to me. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Which only folks in Denver will get that. But that's the, but no, that's absolutely, that's true because then their whole life becomes enraptured in not only to the open mics, but the gossip and all that other stuff where I'm like, do you think that at any point this is going to benefit you? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Have you heard so and so? Dude, their insights into when they talk about open mic scenes, and it's the most hilarious shit you've ever heard. It's not going to get you booked. It's not going to get you followers. Well, it might get you booked, but it's not going to get actual audience members to come see you.
No.
And that's ideally what we're supposed to do. We're trying to get funny enough so people, strangers, people we don't know, say, look, I'm reaching into my pocket right now and putting some money
that's
that
the
I
other
work
thing.
for.
It's a business. You know, I think we forget that it's a business and, you know, that's what, and we're entertainers at the end of the day, you know, so yes, love your craft and try to balance it where you get to talk about what you want to talk about and if you want to make social commentary, but ultimately it needs to be funny. And I think I went to a show the other night, actually at Comedy Works. I'm a huge poli-sci I'm a poli-sci major, so I'm a huge news junkie, and
Boulder,
I'm a
right? Hello, what? Poli-sci major from Boulder? Huh? Huh. That's so weird. I had no idea those existed.
Yes, I know. But, you know, it was interesting because the comic did a fantastic set. It was a long set, and it was all politics. And the reality is, and I think he knows this, people just got fatigued. You know, I mean, I didn't because I'm a fucking dork, and I'm just like, more. Let's talk about the economy. But I think a lot of that audience got fatigued about it, and they kind of, by the end, were like, he's great, he's really funny, but I think there was also an element of like, well, fuck, man, we came out to kind of forget about this stuff, you know, so...
it wasn't the alt room they were hoping for?
No, it wasn't. This is a brilliant comic, and he
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
the thing is,
he talks about all sorts of different things, typically, and I think that's what it is. Is people were probably kind of showing up expecting, you know, his take on lots of different things, and it was very heavy politics. And he even made mention of that. He said, "Listen, I get it, you know, but here's the thing: it has to come out, and this is how it comes out for me." But my point is just that, you know, it's got to be funny and it's got to be entertaining, and you can still make that social commentary, but you have to, if you want to make it in the business, you have to understand what the business is and why people are paying money.
It's kind of like, yeah, exactly. It was funny, I had these, when I was doing Lyft, there was a group of girls that just came in, and one of them was it was a lesbian. I'm not sure about the other two girls, but the other ones, you know, where the one gal, she was like, yeah, well, she asked me, where do you do stand-up? I'm like, oh, the Blush and Blue. I've done that before. She's like, really? How was that? I'm like, oh, it's not the place to work on my ex-girlfriend material, I can tell you that much. And she thought it was really funny, you know, because it's a gay bar. But it kind of goes like, all right, well, here's my audience. what's going to go over
Yeah.
well? What are they going to relate to? How do we get to that point from point A to point
Yeah,
B?
well,
So
or
it's
you can
either-
talk about it. I think you can talk about it. It's just figuring out how do you make it interesting for a certain audience,
Yeah,
you know?
totally. And that's why I love that room, is because, like, all right, let me see if I can make...
Yeah,
see if I
but
can make these girls laugh. You
I mean,
know?
that's what we do every day, right? Is
Right.
we just try to figure out, and that's what I love about comedy. I was talking to somebody about it, and I said I think the thing that attracted me and made me stay in it and makes me still love it is that psychology and that variable of the audience. You know, where you can do 2-3 shows in a night, and you could run the same set theoretically and have 3 completely different shows and
Right.
different reactions, and you can eat a bag of dicks and then maybe kill, and then the last one will just be good enough so that you don't go home and put your head in the oven.
Do we have to find another term other than bag of dicks now? Because that was a Louis C.K. thing, right?
Ah, I like that term.
Yeah, I know. So do I. Where I'm like,
It reminds me of potato chips. I love potato chips.
what would be another term? What would be? I'm trying to think. I'm like, I pretty much went up there and gave myself a Brazilian in front of the rest of the crowd. That's what I did.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I just fucking ripped the fur off my twat with that set. Yeah.
That should be a new one. I think it'd be funny.
Do you think Denver could handle that if that's what I went around saying?
Oh, dude, I'm gonna start.
Hey, did
saying
you have
it.
a good set, Mo? Oh, it was just.
I'll start saying it.
Go on.
How'd it go over there? I'm like, dude, I went up there and pretty much ripped the fur right off my twat. And,
Please let me be there when you say that. Please. I want to see that reaction.
we got a homework assignment there, folks who are watching. I appreciate it. Don't say it in front of the HR rep. The chances are they're not going to.
See, that's the problem with comedy. There is no HR rep.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the news outlets.
Oh. Well, I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. So, I hope you guys have a great week and we're watching. Don't forget to follow or subscribe, or follow anyways. I'm not an affiliate yet. If you like the show, man, by all means, like I said, hit the heart on there, hit the tip cup, hit anything you want. Don't forget to follow
Did you
us
say
on
heart on?
Yeah, the heart on. It's a.
All
Hit
right.
the heart. To
Hit the
follow.
heart
Yes,
on.
exactly. See, if somebody did, then a little zombie would pop up doing like the Cabbage Patch.
Oh,
And
I
they'd be
want to
like-
see that. Somebody, wait, hit it. Hit it. Somebody hit it. Quick. No, I'm just kidding.
Big Canuck is already following. I don't know who else is. But, man, you guys have been great. Thanks for tuning
Thank
in.
you.
If you want to get the audio of these podcasts or any of the podcasts or these interviews that we've done, go to disjointedpod.com. On the archives, you can find all that stuff. It's all for free on iTunes, on Stitcher, on SoundCloud, all that great stuff. And don't forget to follow Mocha Vida, the comedy cougar, on Twitter. So she's in Denver, she's in New York, she's traveling all over the place, man. And if you thought she was awesome on the show, she's way more awesome when you see her live. So thanks so much for following. So, oh, you know what? I forgot to say. There was this one more thing that I was pushing that, let me see, pull this up real quick. Let me get
Do
this.
it. Push.
The
Push.
should be on here. I should have loaded this thing up first. Let me go. It was under the alert tones.
I can't actually carry a tune. That's why I don't do karaoke.
You know what? I miss singing.
This is something you're plugging?
Yeah, it's this thing. It's called the. It's an alert tone that I made.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see. Sounds.
Is
okay.
it a fart sound?
No.
Because I am 9. Do it again. Oh, I like that.
Yep. So if you hit the donate button, or you could actually just buy it at disjointedpod.com. Either way, I will send you the audio file for that.
Hey man, you got a message.
So that way everybody can know when you got a message. And yeah, check it out.
I would
guys.
get that, but it would scare the crap out of me in the middle of the night. I'd be like, oh my God, there's a man in my bedroom.
Why is David here? And I'm like, hey man, I snuck in the house. All right, signing off for the Disjointed Podcast. I'm Dave Germain.
I'm Mo Vida.
You guys
Bye.
have a great week.